The candidate interview is a vital part of the hiring process. Luckily, by the time that you've received a candidate's resume, your recruiting team has already reviewed the candidates and has provided you with the best of the best. As a Selden LLC leader, you will be responsible for interviewing and hiring if there is ever an opening within your team. And although you don't need to be a human resources expert, it is crucial that you are aware of federal and state prohibitions on asking certain types of interview questions. When it comes to interviewing candidates, we must be mindful of the questions that we ask to ensure fairness and uphold the principles of equal opportunity. While it's crucial to gather relevant information to make informed hiring decisions, certain questions are considered inappropriate and discriminatory. Selden LLC hires based on a performance based hiring mindset. The single best predictor of future behavior and performance is past behavior and performance. Our interview questions are based upon these principles. They allow hiring managers to focus on learning about a particular performance situation or task, the action taken by the applicant, and the outcomes of that action. If you've had a job opening within your team this year, then you've noticed that we've been sending the interview packets to you along with your job link. You'll save this interview packet and use it with each and every interview. Today, we're going to be covering a couple of areas in regards to interviewing and hiring the perfect fit for your team. We'll be looking at how to better review a resume and a few things to look for. I'll also cover how to prepare for your interview along with the specifics of interview questions. We'll then close out with some do's and don'ts of interviewing. Let's jump in with reviewing resumes. Here we have a resume from Anne Chovy. Anne has some great qualities that tell us a lot about them before we've reviewed their history. Although the experience listed may not be precisely apples to apples, the performance that we are looking for is blatant. Even though Anne isn't going to be supervising anyone, it is nice that Anne has supervisory experience. Think about traits that a person may need in order to be a successful supervisor. Things that come to mind for me is organized, listens with an open mind and heart, and honesty. Anne also was a business owner. What traits would be those of a great business owner? Anne is likely willing to work hours beyond a normal 9 to 5 and may also be a strong team player with a mindset of all hands on deck to get the job done. Anne has won an award for their service and contributions to the company and customers. They're a lifetime learner. Not only did Anne complete mechanic school, they had a job before they graduated. Does this scream initiative to anyone? Do we look for those who take on initiative on our maintenance teams? Anne is also volunteering and involved in things outside of work. It appears that Anne is a goal setter who pushes themselves. Are these all traits and characteristics of an employee that we might want to have at Selden? Although there's no multifamily experience, does it seem like Anne might be a person who would want to do a good job? Did they seem like someone who is organized and productive, but also customer service oriented? Do we want these same things for our Selden employees? Now let's take a look at Chris P. Bacon. Chris has experience in multifamily maintenance with a relevant skill set to the job. However, Chris's resume has some inaccuracies on it. We can see that they state that they're currently employed in two different positions. There are also a couple of spelling and grammatical errors on the resume. Depending on the role that Chris is applying for, this may be something to consider. When reading the duties of each position, we find that Chris has had a disagreement with her immediate supervisor and left. Chris appears to have the skills to get the job done. They don't list any further achievements or future goals, though. This doesn't mean that we shouldn't interview or hire Chris, but we should use the resume as a tool to assist us in preparing for the interview. Does Chris appear to have an attention to detail? Does Chris show that they're a lifetime learner and grant the assumption of goodwill? These might be areas that we want to explore further. Based on both of these resumes, we would want to interview both candidates. So let's call Anne to set an interview. We might say something like, "Hi, Anne. This is Lana from Selden LLC. I'm calling in response to the application you submitted for service technician. This is a full time position with 40 hours required per week with an on call rotation for emergency maintenance. Are you still interested in being considered for this position? And if Anne says yes, we can simply say, Great, can we go ahead and set an interview time? After you've set the interview, send a calendar invite to the candidate's email address for the interview. Consider sending a reminder before their appointment. Also, prepare yourself before the interview. Have the interview packet ready, whether on your computer or printed, and review the resume and the screening questions before they arrive. Take thorough notes during the interview. Documentation is critical and it shows why one candidate was hired over another. It's also helpful if you're holding numerous interviews. Now, let's prepare for the interview. Now, let's prepare for the Be prepared. Interview question packets, these are fillable forms. You can fill these out on the computer or print them and write in the answers, but just have these ready to go at the beginning of the interview. Read through the candidate's resume and screening questions prior to the interview so you're familiar with their work history. This also gives you an opportunity to create talking points. Also, note some areas to ask questions about. For instance, if they won an award, be prepared to ask them about this. And have an outline of the job details or a day in the life, so to speak. Share some details about what they can expect in regards to the position, potential growth, and if there's any big projects that they may find themselves being a part of. And then, as always, remember your Selden pride and why you love working here. Be respectful. Give your candidates your undivided attention and respect their time. Have another team member keep an eye on the office during the interview. If you're a single staff office, place a close sign on the door with a return time. Ensure that your office phone will be answered by staff or voicemail during the interview. And be on time and ready to start the interview promptly. End the interview on time because the candidate may have to return to their current job, so be respectful of their time. Build rapport. You are a PR agent for Selden LLC. We want you to establish trust, establish a genuine connection, share your 90-second elevator story, why you love working at Selden LLC, and be interested in who they are as well as what they will bring to the team. Be responsive. Should the candidate follow up with questions, be as helpful as possible and answer any questions that they may have. Please remember that any questions directly related to employment or wage should be directed to recruiting@selden.com. Performance based hiring is essentially based on how top performers within organizations look for, compare, and accept one job offer over another. These individuals are looking for growth, challenge, and learning opportunities, not just another job. With a shift in our mindset regarding hiring, our interview questions are now based around the concept of performance based hiring as well. These questions don't allow for a simple yes or no answer. They will elicit a response that will drive back to the candidate's performance. When interviewing your candidate, continue to dig in after they answer. For example, I had an applicant tell me he was promoted at his job within 6 months. I said that was great, and I asked how long he had been the manager. He then told me 2 months, and then he was fired for not performing. Had I not continued to ask questions, I would have left the interview thinking he was a successful manager. Consider yourself to be on a fact finding mission. We don't want to just ask questions and write down the answer and then hire who we liked best based on personal bias. Interview packets should clearly show why one candidate was chosen over another. Here we have a groundskeeper make ready technician interview packet. Let's take a closer look at a few of these performance based hiring questions. What is your most significant professional accomplishment? This is a fact finding question and should be used to discuss recognitions, promotions, and team interactions. Is the candidate able to relay a success story at work? Were they ever promoted or recognized? If they say something like family, reframe back to work and ask if there was a significant professional accomplishment that they're proud of. Rephrasing the question and asking again is completely acceptable. Who have you influenced the most in your professional life? Gauge how they speak about others and their level of pride. Based on the position this person is applying for, their answer can be very insightful. For instance, if you're interviewing a lead service technician and they're unable to think of a single person that they've influenced professionally, that would be something you might want to consider. Or do they speak poorly about previous supervisors or coworkers? Tell me about a time when you had to analyze a problem and find a solution. Analyze their process and their thoroughness. Can they continue their day when things don't go right? Are they effective problem solvers or do they freeze up under pressure? Ask for an example of a time where they had to solve a problem, whether they discuss a customer service issue or a coworker concern or even a task item. Listen for the process that they used to solve the issue. Did they follow up? Get them to share the outcome of the situation. Tell me about a time when your manager was not satisfied with the results of your work. How did you discuss the issues and what did you do differently next time? Do they take constructive criticism well? Are they able to effectively change course? Find out how they take constructive criticism. What was their manager unhappy about? How is the scenario relayed back to you? And were they open when discussing this? What about our company's core values, culture, or mission resonates with you? Have they researched us or looked at our website? Why did they apply for our job? This question displays their overall interest in the company that they have applied for. Describe 2 to 3 characteristics of both the best and the worst managers that you've ever had. Look for how they like to be managed and the management styles that they do not prefer. Share about your leadership style and ask questions based on this. Listen to how they speak about their previous leaders. You may need to dig in further to understand their perceptions. How do you plan to exceed our expectations in this role? Take note of what they mention. Does their answer relate to the position at hand? Imagine asking a leasing applicant this question, and they can relay a solid plan for marketing and follow up. They mention resident retention and knowing their competitors, yet they only have hotel or restaurant experience. If they have shown that they are top performers and critical thinkers, they may have a keen sense of what would make a great leasing agent. After you've asked all of your interview questions, you'll now need to complete the overall assessment portion. Here, you'll rate the candidate from poor to excellent. We'll be looking at these areas as a whole, and again, not ruling out a candidate based on lack of experience alone if they are a top performer. In the final comments, make an overall statement about the interview and the items that stood out to you. A final comment might look something like this: has 4 years of tax credit in HUD, has worked as a multi site leaser with 5 sites, won highest occupancy 2 quarters in 2023, and mentioned wanting to get their NALP. In the next step section, we'd like to see something like run the background and make an offer of. Use the exact hourly or salary number for the position, and then state any items that you believe should be in the offer. Sharing this information gives your recruiters the knowledge to immediately move forward with no gaps in time. If this is a candidate that you do not wish to move forward with, then under next steps you can write none, not pursuing this applicant at this time. Or perhaps you can note that you finished this interview, but you have more interviews to complete and then you'll be making a decision. Once you've completed the interview notes, make sure that your email is open. Then click the submit button at the bottom of the interview notes. This will open a new email window for you and it will attach the notes for you. From here, you can include yourself so that you get a copy as well, and anyone else that you might like to also include. This email will automatically include recruiting@selden.com. Once your email is ready, simply hit send. Let's review some quick do's and don'ts. Do discuss some of the areas that we as Selden employees carry a lot of pride in. This would be mentorship and development. Talk about setting up one on one meetings and connecting the employee with a peer. Celebrating diversity. We respect the individual needs of the people that we work with. We're not just a group of employees. At Selden, we encourage individuality and the freedom to express ourselves. We also lead by example. Remember the 7 leadership principles. Imagine that you're in an interview and the person interviewing you pulls out the behavioral expectations. What does this say about the interviewer and the company? Share not only Selden's vision and expectations, but also yours and your team's. Don't ask for more details regarding criminal activity. If the candidate brings it up, you can simply state that the recruiting team will run a background check and we will review it in its entirety. Don't look at the candidate's social media accounts or court records. You can't take any of this into account. Don't ask when they graduated from high school, and don't ask how much sick leave they take each year. This is actually considered a medical inquiry. Don't ask if they have children, and please don't extend an offer for employment. The recruiting team will handle all offers for you. The primary reason for this is the verbiage that we use and also the process that we follow. We never want to make an offer before we've completed a background check and, on CBMs and above, a reference check. Once these two things are completed, we make a contingent offer based upon a negative drug screen. Only after we've received the drug screen results will the recruiters extend a formal offer. Now, let's talk about some quick interview questions that can get you into some trouble. Are you a United States citizen? You can't ask this question, nor can you ask where a person was born or if they speak a language that is unrelated to the offered job. This is to avoid potential discrimination based on citizenship or national origin. Instead, you can ask if a person is authorized to work in the United States. Have you ever been arrested? You cannot ask someone if they've been arrested because an arrest is simply an allegation and innocence is assumed until proven guilty. Regulations regarding this question change from state to state, so it's worth checking what exactly you can ask in your region. If your candidate brings up the criminal record, let them know that the recruiting team will run a background check and then bring the conversation back to the open position. Do you have any children? This is the sort of question that can come up innocuously enough while making small talk with a candidate, but you really shouldn't ask it. If you end up rejecting the candidate, they could argue that you denied them the job because they have children, and this is against the law. Even if this is not the case, you'll have to prove that in court. There's a good chance a candidate will bring up their children on their own, which is fine, but the best practice is to bring the conversation back around to the subject of work. Are you married? Here's another one that can creep up in casual conversation, but it's potentially unlawful because it obviously reveals the candidate's marital status and potentially their sexual orientation. Again, the candidate might bring up their significant other on their own, and that's fine, but try to bring the conversation back to the open position. Are you pregnant? This could come up innocently enough, particularly if the candidate is obviously pregnant, but don't ask it. You should never ask this question anyway for lots of reasons. Like the previous two examples, if the candidate brings it up, be polite, then try to steer the conversation back to work. Is English your first language? This is essentially asking someone about his or her ethnic background, which is not permitted. You can ask if they can speak and write in English or any other language that relates to the job, just not that it's their first language. What's your gender? This is an absolute no go. Same with asking someone what race they are or about their sexual orientation. Interviewers like to break the ice of interviews by asking candidates about their families and hobbies. While this is quite normal and personable, it can lead to some serious problems. So, who are you voting for? Or maybe, who did you vote for? Many people probably wish that politics were banned from work, but thankfully, it is banned from job interviews. Stay away from this one, even if you think it might relate to the job. Such questions can be seen as discriminatory and can lead to potential legal issues. It's best to focus on questions that are directly related to the applicant's qualifications, experience, and suitability for the job. A general rule of thumb to follow: if it doesn't relate directly to the job, don't ask it. Regulations change from state to state, so there might be questions you can't ask in some places that you can ask in others. But if you are unsure whether you can ask a question or not, ask yourself this: does the question relate directly to the job and the candidate's ability to perform a specific task associated with that job? If you have any questions regarding interviewing and hiring, please reach out to your recruiting team at recruiting@selden.com. If this presentation has piqued your interest in all things recruiting, please check out the remaining trainings covering recruiting, onboarding, and the first day impression.